Hello and welcome back to another session of this Money Show Virtual Expo. Without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Dan Sauer, the President and CEO of Vertical Petroleum Industries in Ardmore, Oklahoma. Currently, VPI partners with multiple operators, geologists, and field engineers to ensure the success of over 20 projects for more than 7 years. Now, to our live viewers, feel free to type any questions you have into the chat box. If we have time, we'll see if we can get to some at the end. With that all said, Dan, I will hand the mic on over to you now. I'll be right here if you need me, but the floor's all yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I was just been ready all day, just waiting for you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. We scrambled. We had the time, or I can't say we. I had the times wrong, so they saved me right at the very last moment. So here we are. Let's go through this. I'd like to say welcome. I do know that as over the last couple of days, I do have a few partners of ours that are watching. So I'd like to welcome them. I would also like to say anybody that's looking for the first time, I look forward to showing you this. My name is Dan Sauer. I'm the President, CEO of Vertical Petroleum Industries. We're out in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and we have partners literally all over the country. What we do is what I'm about to show you. We drill oil wells for some incredible tax advantages for anybody that can. It's almost who doesn't, but whoever can use some incredible tax advantages in their investments, and obviously for some incredible potential returns. So let's get started. I do like to start every project with a quote here. Warren Buffett says, "If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will literally work until you die." And I've lived by that motto for a long time. I refer to it sometimes as starting a company and getting it to run on cruise control. Let money work for you. And so anyway, that's what this is all about. And so let's go ahead and run through this. Some of the things we're going to go over. If I can get my system started here. Some of the things we're going to go over is who's Dan Sauer. I kind of want to tell you a little bit about my history and what started this company, the history of Vertical Petroleum. The current project that we have is up in what's called the Bonanza Development. It's up in Pontotoc County, Oklahoma. It's probably about an hour east of Oklahoma City, if you're trying to find that on a map. Now, like I said a moment ago, we do want to talk about some of these tax advantages and the profit potential. So let's run through it really quick. First of all, who's Dan Sauer? I'll tell you right now, I'm an investor just like most of you. I started this company. My background is not in oil development. I'm not a geologist. I'm not a petroleum engineer. I invested into various oil projects, and the more I got to know it, the deeper I got. Next thing you know, I purchased an actual lease, and it just kept growing larger and larger. Now we've literally got over 60 wells that we've drilled now over the last 8 years. We've got upwards to 30 different projects, and we're getting pretty good at it. So that's what we want to talk about. I do have a pretty large family in this small town that I have here. This is my wife. Actually, this needs to be updated. As of just a month or two ago, we've now been married 29 years. So we have 5 great kids. Like I said, it's not so much an oil background, but most of my background is in finance, in real estate, and now in oil and gas. Beyond that, I have had over the last probably 2 years, because I think of some of our success, I have had the privilege of speaking across the country on oil and gas. You'll hear me say this at least once. I used to say that it's a good year to be in oil and gas. With the forecasts that I'm sure you read about and you hear about all the time, you hear a lot of discussion about oil. I now say that it's not a good year to be in oil. It's a good decade to be in oil. The forecast for oil is extremely strong. But we talk about that in a lot of different arenas. This one in particular right here is actually with the Money Show. It's one of their live shows. We do most of the Money Show expos, in Las Vegas and Orlando. We do a lot of the symposiums that's been around. We just recently did San Francisco just here back a couple of months ago. I do get to share the stage with some amazing speakers. Steve Forbes is just a great guy. He's obviously a big proponent of oil and gas. Charles Payne, spectacular individual, fun to hang around with, and incredibly knowledgeable. Robert Kiyosaki, if you guys know Robert Kiyosaki, you know that he's not just a terrific guy, but real estate and oil and gas. He's and very huge proponent on tax advantages and tax savings. I've got a little clip of Robert talking about tax savings on this project that I'm going to run here for a moment. But in addition to that, Kevin Harrington, a lot of people might remember Kevin for a variety of reasons, but he was one of the original sharks on Shark Tank. He started Shark Tank actually, and was on it for the first couple, 2 or 3 seasons, and then went on to do other projects. He now has an actual project called American Entrepreneur, and it's on all the finance stations, Bloomberg and CNN, Business CNN, Fox Business, those. But I was recently invited to appear on that, and I want to show just a clip of that a little bit, of an interview that we had on American Entrepreneur, and because it'll explain a little bit about what it is we do. So let me start with that.
Hi, I'm Kevin Harrington, an original shark from Shark Tank. Founded by a real estate and oil investor, Vertical Petroleum Industries provides its partners with exceptional projects offering exceptional returns. And joining me today is CEO Dan Sauer. Dan, thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Appreciate
My pleasure. So you're in an awesome industry, and just want to know, how long have you actually been in business now?
I started BPI in 2016, but prior to that, I had actually invested in several projects.
Oil and gas?
Oil and gas.
So you've been in oil and gas for the last 7 or 8 years.
Strictly in oil and gas for the last almost 8 years.
Yeah.
Now, prior to that, my background is more in real estate, finance, but I invested in a number of oil projects, and that's kind of where I learned that they've got some incredible benefits.
Let's talk about it. I mean, I want to know, why is oil and gas such an attractive opportunity for investors?
Well, primarily 3 things is usually what most people concentrate on. One is because I invest in oil fields, I don't invest in large companies like Exxon or Chevron. By investing in oil fields, the returns can be spectacular. I've literally seen partners get 2 to 3 times their investment back within the first 12 months.
Wow, that's awesome.
And the biggest thing probably that gets a lot of people's attention is the tax advantages. The IRS has a code that states that if you were to invest in any domestic energy, specifically oil and gas exploration.
Domestic, right? Because they want to bring it back to the US.
And specifically oil and gas exploration.
Gotcha.
100% of your initial investment is a write-off.
Oh, wow.
So that's like getting 30% return on your investment back
Right
the
away.
very first year,
Right.
regardless of what we produce.
Gotcha.
So
Right.
that's a huge benefit. And then the last thing is you're not watching stock going up or down. You're not doing, it's literally monthly revenue. This is a revenue-based investment, which allows, monthly checks, coming home every month.
Do you have to be an operator, or are you an operator in this business?
I'm not. And I was investing with an operator prior to doing this, and I learned that there's some disadvantages to that, actually. An operator typically is the outfit that's out in the field doing all the field work. I'm what's called an oil developer. And an oil developer to the operator is similar to like a land developer with a general contractor. The only problem is with an operator is they have what's called carried interest.
What does that mean exactly?
If you invest with an operator, it's a percentage of the deal that the operator literally takes off the top, causing the investor to literally pay for his portion of his ownership.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes 25, 30% of the deal ends up being owned by and he never puts up any of his own money.
Does VPI have carried interest?
No, they do not.
No, good.
No, what we do is we literally put our funds in the same as our partners. So we pay for our own shares, just like our partners.
Oh, awesome. What do you say to those that don't know much about this industry?
Our paperwork that we'll provide is pretty clear. It's pretty simple to get through. Most of our partners are professionals. They're generally accredited investors or sophisticated. However, they rarely have a background in geology or petroleum engineering.
Right.
Nor did I.
But you hire those experts.
That's
right?
exactly
Yeah.
right. We
Okay.
surround ourselves with some of the best there is.
Yeah.
So ultimately, they're coming in for the incredible tax benefits and the profit margins.
Right. So Dan, tell me who your typical partner actually is.
Yeah, we have over 200 partners now. Where do I start? They come from every walk in life, from all over the country. They're generally professional. Sometimes they're retired, sometimes they're working, mostly Republican. However, I think that if I were going to put a common denominator between every one of our partners, I believe that they have one goal in mind, and that's mailbox money.
Mailbox money. That check in the
Ultimately,
mail every
they're
month.
looking to have revenue sent to them each and every month. That's one common denominator, even myself, that we all have as a partner.
Awesome. Is there an example of something that you guys have been involved with that has turned into a great project for you?
There's an old saying, it says, the best place to find oil is in an oil field.
Right.
We don't take a lot of risk. We don't do what's called wildcatting. We're
Right.
gonna go out. We generally will do leases right out in the middle of where all the big boys are out there drilling anyway. We already know there's oil there. All
Right.
the testing has been done. And we do mid to shallow stuff that's got a very, low risk factor.
Low risk. That's the
and
key.
and the returns have been, very solid.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Dan, I want to thank you very much for being with us today. The folks that are out there that would like information, I want you to visit vpiofok.com to get started. And Dan, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I appreciate you having me.
You bet.
You bet.
Okay, one of or three of the things that I kind of touched on in that video are the three things that I talk about the most. And it's these three things right here. What makes VPI so successful is, number one, the tax advantages. I'll tell you right now, the idea that you can take money from, like if you've got money in something that's not paying out real well, or we've most of our partners are accredited investors. They usually have a certain amount of money tied up into the stock market, where it's not too hard to find a group of them that you would consider almost your dogs, that you can literally, by moving it over from where it's at, moving it over into the energy sector, specifically in oil and gas exploration, you literally get to that money that you move over, you're able to literally write it off. So that's a huge, huge benefit. And it's regardless of production. I mean, in some cases, depending on what time of year it is, we'll be able to get the write-off before we could even get started. And so and we're going to go into that a little bit more into detail right here. As earlier I mentioned, Robert Kiyosaki, a huge oil investor, proponent of oil and gas, entrepreneur. I've met with him on a number of occasions. He put together a video specifically regarding the tax advantages, and I'd like to go ahead and show that to you. He said that it's probably the best tax advantage investment over the last 30 plus years and counting. I mean, he says there's nothing that can compare to this for taxes.
Tom, one of the reasons I love investing in oil production, I don't invest in oil companies like Exxon or Chevron. I actually invest in oil fields. And one of the reasons I love oil is because of the tax. But if I put $100,000 into an oil investment, what happens next?
What happens is you get such a big deduction the first year that it's like the government's handing you a check for about $30,000
So if I put $100,000 in, I get $30,000 back right there.
immediately.
So that's like a 30% return day one. So that's really what most people do not understand, that the tax laws are really incentives for professional investors.
That's exactly right. And this is true in most countries. While the tax laws vary on like oil and gas, in the US, anybody who invests in US oil and gas, no matter where you live, gets that same tax benefit.
So let's say I put $100,000 in, and it's very, very easy to get a 10% cash return. So the 100,000 I put in, and every year I get $10,000 coming back in. What kind of tax do I pay on that 10,000 in cash flow?
Oh, that's the next great thing from a tax standpoint in the US. You only pay tax on about 80% of that income.
So we get a tax break because we're doing what the government wants us to do, which is to provide energy and fuel. And, you know, oil doesn't just go to gasoline, it goes to fertilizer, plastics, and a whole bunch of building materials. So a civilized country runs on energy. Without energy, civilization would crash. And that's why the government gives us
Tax incentives.
Yes, they do give us tax incentives. So let me move on. But before I do want to mention one thing, that it's not just the initial write-off, but we take it one step further. For those of you who might have thought you heard that wrong, not only do you get the initial investment, being able to write that off, but you also get additional advantages. There's what's called the small producers tax credit that allows your revenue that you get from owning part of a well, because you get paid on these literally, you know, every time we sell oil, most people receive monthly checks where there's a portion of that you get tax free. And we'll go over that in detail, but so it's just got huge tax incentives, and I think I've shown you that. Now, let me show you how the rest of this works. First of all, let me talk about the project that we're getting ready to do. Essentially, it's this. As a company, what VPI does is we'll go out, we'll find a variety of different things that are going on in Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to drill oil. And so we'll find various projects. When we find the one we want to select, we'll literally go in, we'll do all the leasing, all the legal work, get the permits, we'll get everything ready. Once it's all set to go, then we'll go ahead and I'll bring partners in. I'm the first investor in every project, and then we'll bring partners in to fill up the rest. And we drill, test, complete it, put it into production, and then we all basically share in the proceeds that it produces every month. That's essentially how it works. So the one we're working on right now is called the Bonanza Development. There are, we have 4 of them, 4 wells or 4 projects that we're starting with right out of the chute. And right now we've just funded the first one. We're on to our second one, and we're almost through that one. The drilling is about to commence here probably in the next couple of weeks on the first one. And so this one will just about be done. So we'll be able to move all the equipment from one to the next one. So there's not going to be a long lag time on this. But I will say that of all the projects we've done all through Texas and now coming up into Oklahoma, way up into northern Oklahoma, this is in more central Oklahoma. This is our 3rd area that we're now doing. It's probably the most exciting project we've done so far. I'm extremely excited about this. We got very high potential returns. This particular project we have, one of the reasons why we're so excited about it is there's 13 various pay zones as we drill down through it, which gives us, it's basically like having 13 wells in one. There's different zones that you go through. We'll refer to them as, they're formations, but we'll refer to them as pay zones that they're actually producing from all around us. So we have a tremendous mitigated risk in this project because there's so much to choose from right where we're at. We're going down about 5,000 feet, which is good because we're not so deep that we start making it difficult. It's pretty easy to drill down to that depth, and we've looked at it. In a moment, I'm going to talk about a geologist and what his thoughts are on it. But of course, this is a new drilling project, which is necessary for the tax write-off. So it is a new drilling project. It's referred to as exploration. And like I said, it's probably our most exciting so far. Now, to really understand it, you've got to understand the production and what it is that we're going after. This fellow right here, his name's Ed Kaiser. Ed Kaiser has spent like a career in this area. He has mapped over 1,000 square miles of what's called the Hunton and the Wilcox zones. He knows some of these areas up here like we know our backyard. It's what he's done. He has been attributed, he's been doing this for 25, 30 years. He doesn't like for me to say much over 30 years because he says it makes him feel old. But he's got a lot of experience. Let me just say that. He's probably one of the most respected geologists in the entire state of Oklahoma. He has been accredited with 5 major oil discoveries and 7 new field discoveries. This is the crazy thing. There are geologists that have been doing this just as long without having one of those, not even one new field discovery or one major oil discovery. He's got 7 new field discoveries and 5 major oil discoveries. The Oklahoma Geological Society gave him the Word of Distinction in recognition for his educational and historical contributions. I could not be teamed up with a more awarded and knowledgeable geologist. I'm very, very lucky to be teamed up with this guy. This is what he just laid out for us. This is the area that we're going into. These are the 13 different zones that we're going after. If you look down there on the bottom one, down between 38 to about 5,000 feet, we're going about a mile down below the surface. If you look at that Wilcox there, the second, third from the bottom, that's pretty much our target zone. That's called the Wilcox Sand. Very, very well known in this area. They, millions of barrels of oil have been taken out over the historical, throughout this Wilcox. Also, just above that, the Hunton. We've already gone through, done all the testing. He knows exactly what we're looking for, exactly where we're drilling down to. But I just wanted to give you a visual of what we're looking at here. Here are the facts. The well data that he has put together so far, it anticipates the Ben Cartwright. That's the name of this second well that we're funding right now. The well data anticipates that the Ben Cartwright well to produce approximately 300 to 500 barrels a day. Now, where that comes from is a couple of things. We know what's going on right around us. We have a lease that wraps up about 1,100 acres called the Bonanza lease. Right around us, there's a number of people that are drilling, and they're producing from these areas. These are some of the, if you look, these are what's called load tickets. These scout tickets are what you're going to see when oil gets picked up, and you can see what they're doing per day. I mean, you've seen some of these wells doing, one of them opened up as much as 743 barrels of oil per day. Another one was at 605 barrels of oil per day. That one you see right there is 1,540 barrels of oil per day. But actually, if you look at the note on it right there, it says a 48-hour right there on the bottom left. So that was actually a 2-day run. So it still takes it down around 700. There's one that only did 140 barrels of oil per day. There's some up there showing that there's gas in this area that it's still unknown whether we're going to be able to market the gas. Gas is very low right now. So we'll have to figure it to see if it's marketable. But these are primarily being drilled for their oil production. And so here's what I kind of want to show you. If you look at this black outline that you see, that's kind of the shape of the lease as it comes around. That big bend across the top is called that's the line of the Canadian River. We go right up to the Canadian River on the lease, but this red area that you see circled is from a geological standpoint, Ed can explain this really in detail, but there are reasons why these locations are set where they are. But these locations right here, there's 4 wells already set that we know. The first one, if you start over here to the right, that is right there called the Ben Cartwright, or the Adam Cartwright, and the other one is the Ben Cartwright, and then it just goes on and on. If you haven't figured out by the Cartwrights, it was called the Bonanza lease, so we thought it was clever to go ahead and name them after the Cartwrights. We've got the Ben Cartwright, the Adam Cartwright, and of course what's coming is going to be the Hoss, and then of course the Little Joe. And so those will be the next 2 coming up after this one. We are going to, but these are the locations. And with all those load tickets where he said that it was, 700 and 600 and 500 barrels of oil per day, I said, how do I know what I can really count on for when I talk to investors? Because we're going to have to look at barrels of oil per day to figure out what we could feasibly make for a revenue coming back for us. We need to know what kind, what can we count on? His statement to me said, although we expect exceedingly more production, probably over 400 barrels per day on these wells, he says, I feel you're totally safe showing 140 barrels of oil per day as a suggested minimum. Now, where he got that is if you look at all the different formations that are down below, depending on what we find in these lower locations, even the ones in the upper zones up in there, they won't do as much. But even if we add up some of those, he said that based on all the wells around us, he come up with, I feel totally safe showing 140 barrels of oil per day as a suggested minimum. So those are the numbers I want you to remember and talk about here just for a moment. Here's where we go, because now that we know the production, now we can talk about the profit potential. Here's how it works. We've already established, I'm going to see if I can move this or else I won't be able to see my figures. I don't know if that affects your screen, but it allows me to see what I'm doing here. So the daily production, if we're looking at our anticipated minimum at 140 barrels, that BOPD right there, that stands for barrels of oil per day. So if we take that over 30 days per month, that would be 4,200 barrels of oil per month over a 30-day period on the entire project. If we look at a minimum of $75 a barrel, and I won't even say minimum. I had to base it somewhere. As you guys know, oil's been averaging between 75 and 80, up to 85 and even higher. 75 is kind of where we figure a lot of our profit margins at. But you'll see here why I'm in just a moment. At 4,200 barrels of oil per month, at $75 per barrel, that's $315,000. Now, we do work on an 80-20. 20% of everything that comes out of the ground goes to the landowner. They own all the mineral rights. So the first 20% is going to the landowner, and we get what's called the net revenue interest, or NRI. So if you take the $315,000 times 8%, you'd have, or 80% actually, it's 8% per unit. You come up with $252,000. So that's the net revenue after you repay the landowners. So using the above estimation, the lease itself would generate $252,000 monthly net revenue. So that's the figure I want you to remember. But how does that pertain to us now? If the lease is making $252,000 in a month net revenue, here's what I've done. The entire raise for the lease, drill, test, completion, everything. This is a turnkey operation, you guys. Let me explain that. In other words, everything all in is $1.9 million, $1,960,000. It's 100% working interest, 80% net revenue. What I've done is I've taken that, and that is also a turnkey, which means that if for some reason they go over that, it's what's called the AFE. If they go over their suggested this 1.9 million, that's not on us. We never are going to get one of these. And anybody who's ever invested in oil before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Where all of a sudden they notify you and say, we're going to need another 32,000, or we're going to need another this much. Or I used to constantly get those. This is a turnkey, which means that this will take us all the way from the beginning, drill, test, completion, all the way through to production. So we know that this is our entire investment. What I've done is I've taken that 1.9 and I've divided it into 10 units, which means that 1 unit of ownership on this is $196,000. That would give you 10% of the entire project, 8% net revenue. So this is how it works. If you own a unit for $196,000, the monthly net revenue we've already established is $252,000. If you own a unit, that means you own 10%. 10% working interest per unit is $25,200. Now keep in mind, this is net revenue. We've already taken off what goes to the landowner. So if you own a unit, 10% working interest, it'd be $25,000 a month. Now, if you take that over 12 months, works out to be just a little over $300,000. So let me summarize this. $302,000 is your anticipated annual net revenue per unit on a $196,000 investment. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but this is not numbers we're just coming up out of the blue on. This is stuff that I'm getting from not just a licensed geologist, but this is from Ed Kaiser. Ed Kaiser is one of the most renowned geologists in the state of Oklahoma. He's the one that are giving me these numbers. We've already got the lease. We've already got everything ready to go. We've already put this in. We've already started preparing this area. We're getting ready to do this deal. This won't last very much longer. If these numbers are accurate, it literally would give you over 150% anticipated return on your investment, which is well under a 12-month mark. Is that normal? It's not. But I will say that it's also the reason that I say it's probably one of the most exciting projects we've ever done. The anticipated profit on this is through the roof, almost to the point to where I will say that it's not just exceedingly high. It's allowed us to do a couple of things. What if we didn't do that? If we didn't do that and only did a portion of that, we've got a lot of margin for error here. So guys, I will tell you, there's just the three things again, the tax advantages we've got going for us, and the tremendous potential for profit, as well as the ability that we have. It's not watching stock go up and down. It's literally having these profits. This oil is sold literally daily. It depends when, on each load goes through, but we're paying out in most cases, like I said, monthly revenue. So you're getting paid on this, and that's where we refer to as mailbox money. And that's obviously the third thing we like to talk about: the tax advantages, the profit potential, and it's a revenue-based investment where we're getting paid on this every month. So I will say this: you're going to see our information here on the screen. There's two things I would have you do right now. If you have some questions, you can certainly send it to this email, or if you go to the screen, there's place to mark on the screen what you can, if you have any questions, one of us will reach out to you. We'll give you the details, and we will send you the information that we all just went over a lot more in detail. So I would say, I don't know, because I came just right in at the very last second to do this. I'm not sure how we are on time. How are we? Do we have time for a question or two, or I'm not sure where we are?
We are just about out of time now. We do have a question in the chat, but I would say to Timothy, if you would go ahead and scroll on down. As Dan mentioned, there is a virtual booth below the video player where you can submit your question, put in your email address, and they will get back to you with an answer. With that all said, Dan, thank you so much. It was a fantastic presentation. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Shooting from the hip.
100% prepared today. What are you talking about?
Okay. Appreciate the support. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everything you guys do.
Thank you as well. And to those of you in our live audience, be sure to stay tuned, as we do have more in store for you throughout this Money Show Virtual Expo. But of course, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.